I can share the screen for our text. Little clicking that I was hoping for, but such are the way of technology. There we go. All right, now we are cooking with gas. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your patience. I'm sorry for the little technical difficulties there, but well, it seems like people keep changing the process every single time, and I am a big fan of when it works, don't break it, and improve on other things or add other capabilities. But we're not here to discuss the life cycle of different technical programs, and certainly I'm not there to tell them how to make money. They do seem to be doing that quite well. I'm here to tell us a little bit more about Torah, and in particular about the roles that we have in life and some of what happens when those roles are breached. In particular, we will eventually get into the topic of karet. Karet is often translated as excision because it comes from the same word to cut, but it is a little bit more slippery than that. The same way our last discussion revolved around the meaning of the word cherem, which often gets misleadingly translated as excommunication. Our discussion of karet today is subject to the same problem. It is often considered to be an excommunication stand-in in the ancient world, that a person would be banished from the community. They would be cut off from the community, but that is not our classical, traditional, rabbinical understanding of it. But to figure out what is the understanding, we're going to need to get a bit of an example. And to do that, well, we're going to analyze a bit of chapter 4. And here we are in the book of Bamidbar and in Parashat Bamidbar. We are beginning to really get ourselves organized. Remembering, of course, that according to the narrative, we are planning to leave Mount Sinai now that we have received Torah and the basic outline of how we are to rule ourselves and head off to the land of Israel. We will not be doing that willy-nilly. We'll be doing that in an organized fashion. Some of that organization comes down to how the tribes are arranged, but there is also a substantial part of the Torah that is used to explain how the Kohanim and Leviim will be arranged. And that's where we are in chapter 4. We are looking at one of the sub-clans of the tribe of Levi. And let's go ahead and let the Torah speak for itself, and then we'll take it from there. Just notice my camera's pointing sort of over the top of my head, which is not where I want it to, not where I want it to be. All right, so chapter 4, verse 1. Adonai spoke to Moshe and to Aharon, saying, take up the head count of the sons of Kehat. Kehat is this sub-clan that is part of the tribe of Levi, from the midst of the sons of Levi, by their clans, by their father's house, from the age of 30 years and upward until the age of 50 years, all who enter the working force to do skilled work in the tent of appointment. So we are dealing here with a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup. That is to say, this is part of the group of the tribe of Kehat that are between the ages 30 and 50. That is their 20-year tour of duty, if you will, in which they will be serving in the capacity that is about to be outlined. This is the serving task of the sons of Kehat in the tent of appointment, the holiest holy things. All right, so different subgroups have different appointments, have different tasks that have been given to them, designated to them. And their task is going to be Kodesh HaKodeshim, the holy of holy things. So they are dealing with the most sacred items that are found within the Mishkan. So what is that going to involve? Well, verse 5, Aaron and his sons are to come when the camp marches forward, and are to take down the curtain of the screen, and are to cover it with the coffer of the testimony. So coffer is the fancy word in Fox's translation for the Aron, for the ark. So the Mishkan, of course, was the tabernacle, was a tent that was moved from location to location. Unlike the Temple of Jerusalem, later built by Solomon many, many hundreds of years later, this was something that could be taken down and then put up in different places. Well, when you're dealing with the Holy of Holies, that creates a certain, I guess we could say, hazard, because people who are not Aaron and his sons are not allowed into the Holy of Holies, and even Aaron was not allowed into the Holy of Holies except under very strict conditions of the Yom Kippur service. So, how do you take it down if you're not allowed in? Well, simply put, Aaron and his sons would come, because they were allowed into the screened off area, and they would take things down. And once that is taken down, then others are allowed to come in and handle the other things they are meant to handle. So the sanctity was something that could be turned on and off in this place. And as such, you had to have the right person turn it off and, of course, turn it on. But that would then allow others to come in. It's almost like you're deactivating the security system by having the people who have the passwords to open the door. So that's what Aaron is doing in verse 5. Continuing in verse 6, they are to put over it a covering of tanned leather skin, and are to spread a cloth entirely of blue violet on top, putting its poles in place. So the Aron, the Holy Ark, is then covered in this special covering, and the poles are put in place, which go on either side of it. Verse 7, on the table of the presence, they are to spread a cloth of blue violet, and are to place on it the bowls, the ladles, the jars, and the jugs for pouring offerings, and the regular bread is to remain on it. So the table that was in the outer chamber within the Mishkan is also covered and prepared for transportation. Verse 8, they are to spread over these a cloth of warm scarlet, and are to cover it with a covering of tanned leather skin, and put its poles in place. So everything gets its layer and its carrying process. Verse 9, they are to take a cloth of blue violet and to cover the lampstand, this is the menorah, for the lighting, its lamps, its tongs, and its fire pans, and all the implements for its oil, which they use in conjunction with it. It goes as a unit. They are to place it and all its implements in a covering of tanned leather skin, and place them on a frame. Over the altar of gold, they are to spread a cloth of blue violet, and are to cover it with a covering of tanned leather skin, putting its poles in place. They are to take all the implements of attending with which they tend in the holy shrine, and are to put them in a cloth of blue violet, and are to cover them with a covering of tanned leather skin, placing them on a frame. So all of these different elements of great sanctity are being put into their proper shipping mode, where they will be covered in different ways, and then they will have poles attached if that is part of their carrying process, so that everything is prepared for travel. In verse 13, we see that there's a few more things that need to be done. They are to de-ash the altar, and are to spread on it a cloth of purple. They are to place on it all the implements that they use in conjunction with them, the fire pans, the flesh hooks, the scrapers, and the bowls, all the implements of the altar, and they are to spread over it a covering of tanned leather skin, and put its poles in place. All right, so we've got all of this preparation done by Aaron and his sons, meaning the other Kohanim. And in verse 15, we finally, 15 verses later, come back to the people that we began the passage with, which is the people from the clan of Kahat. So here they come back now that everything has been prepared. Once Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy things and all the holy implements, which when the camp marches on, only after that may the sons of Kahat enter to carry, so that they do not touch the holy things and die. These are the carrying chores of the sons of Kehat in the tent of appointment. Okay, so right away we get this idea that although Aaron and his sons are the ones hacking everything up, it will actually be the clan of Kehat from the tribe of Levi that will do the schlepping, that will do the actual carrying. And it appears that there is a significant caution here that they have to observe a hands-off approach until everything has been made ready. Lest they die. Now, that lest they die is something that we're going to have to come back to in our discussion, but it does seem to have a death level of severity. Now, you might be thinking, hold on, is this the kind of thing that is going to be killed because you did this by the court? Meaning, will you be executed by the court? Or is this the kind of thing like what happened to Aaron's sons when they transgressed during the inauguration of the Mishkan and were struck down directly by God? Those are excellent questions that you're asking yourself. Hold on to them. Accountable is Eleazar, son of Aharon the priest, for the oil of the light, the fragrant smoking incense, the regular grain gift, the oil of the anointing, accountable for all the dwelling and all that is in it, whether the holy things or its implements. So Eleazar is being given a particular list of things that are going to be his focus. Verse 17, Adonai spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, do not cut off the tribe of the clans of Kehat from the midst of the Levites. Do this with them, that they may live and not die when they encroach upon the holiest holy things. Aaron and his sons are to enter and assign them, each one to his service, his carrying chores. All right, well, here is our cutting off, right? Our karet, or here in the conjugated form, tachritu, right? That you are not to cut off this group. Well, what does that mean? Don't cut them off. Obviously, we're not talking about American idioms where you're cutting someone off on the freeway. We are dealing with a foreign language. Just always remember that whenever you see something in an English translation, that it is similar in some English phrase that probably is not what the Hebrew was intending. We've got to wrestle with words rather than assume we know. So the cutting off here is what we're going to have to wrestle with. Because verse 18, first and foremost, is saying that in light of 19 and everything before it, that the idea here is that if we did this wrong, then there would be karet, that there would be a cutting off, and that to avoid this cutting off, we have to make sure we follow all of the procedures that were described in the chapter so far, and other stipulations for handling of the holy items. But that seems to be what we're talking about. Don't cut them off by letting them do things that are counter to what has just been instructed. Now, in verse 19, we introduce the notion that there is also this question of living and not dying. But there is no apparent implementation of a criminal process where somebody would be taken before a court, tried for having transgressed, and then executed. And this is going to lead us to our basic traditional understanding of the word karet, which is the cutting off, which is to say that a karet is when you have committed an infraction that then exposes you to the risk of divine execution, that you are not going to be taken to the court, but that you are now vulnerable to a heavenly judgment at any moment that could take your life. Now, it does not have to be as dramatic as what happened to Aaron's sons. It doesn't have to be fire snaking out and killing you in a Hollywood-style episode. Instead, it can simply be that your time was cut short, that your life was cut short. And that then becomes our traditional understanding. Now, that is the nutshell. We're going to spend a lot of time in our commentary going over that concept of karet, because just saying that is not really enough for us to understand what was intended and what we are meant to make of it, and how we are meant to guide ourselves in the current world in light of our understanding. So, karet, in the short, is when a person has transgressed a mitzvah whose punishment is karet, is cutting off. We should then categorize that punishment as the person who transgressed is now subject to, at any point in the future, a execution at the hand of heaven, but not execution at the hands of the community. So this is not like when somebody commits murder and they are then subject to capital punishment at the hands of the court. This is somebody has committed a grave transgression, but any punishment that will be meted out to them will be meted out to them by God. And we, as a community, do not engage in that type of adjudication. Okay, so we're going to leave it there at the end of, well, I'll go ahead and do 20 because it's short. But they are not to enter and see, even for a moment, the dismantling of the holy shrine, lest they die. So again, all of these things are there to keep them well back during this whole process, because there is a death element involved. And like I said, the traditional understanding of this back and forth between cutting off, live, don't die, and etc. is that the death is not going to be done by the court. The death will be done directly by God at some time of God's choosing. Okay. Any questions or comments up to this point? Okay. I'm going to give one of my own comments. Just for those of you that have done other study before, especially if you've studied from non-traditional sources, you've often seen this term karet, or cutting off, used as a phrase for banishment or for driving someone out, for shunning. Clearly, that's not what's going on here. Cherem can be used for a social reprimand of cutting off the person from communication or business. Karet, as we can see from this passage in particular, is definitely dealing with life or death, but it is not dealing with it in the hands of the court. That is why it is so important, and why karet is considered to be one of the most severe punishments available. I know that most of us would consider death at the hands of the court, having your head cut off, as being pretty much top of the list of bad things. But karet is considered to be more, because this is something that is happening directly from God rather than by the court. So keep that in mind as we go through this. Now, Ibn Ezra is going to start us off here about what does this mean by they will live and not die. Well, he is explaining that not die means by karet, by excision. Like I was explaining, Ibn Ezra comes to confirm that this is indeed the traditional rabbinic understanding, that the karet itself is the threat of death. And the families of the Kohatites will be rewarded if they observe, and will be punished if they do not. After all, we said, live long and don't die. But without the phrase, and do not die, our verse could be taken to imply that they will not be punished. So the reason why it has to say they follow the rules, they will live long, the reason why they add in and not die is because you might have thought this was just an opportunity for reward, but that there was no downside. That if we did it right, we got rewarded. If we did it wrong, we didn't get any reward, but we also didn't get punishment. But of course, it does say, and not die. And therefore, we know that there is a real danger here. There is an actual punishment that could come. Or HaChaim continues to help us unravel this issue with the Levites and their performance of these duties. The Torah means that the Holy Ark, whose contents, Torah and the tablets, is a dispenser of life, will ensure that the Kohatites, so much easier to just say B'nai Kahat, who carry it, would enjoy long life. So he's going off a sort of an allegory here. The Torah and everything else that the Ark represents is there to give life. That is the whole point of God's giving of revelation. And that means that the people who are carrying it on poles are also going to enjoy long life. Makes perfect sense. Seeing that some of the B'nai Kahat might be afraid that unauthorized touching or viewing would cause them to die, because that is, the Torah adds, so that they will not die, to put at rest such fears of the Bnei Kahat that they would die by accidentally touching or viewing what they were not supposed to view or touch. So the fact that there is in order that they avoid this, implies that it is avoidable. The real concern that Or HaChaim is working off here is that the people of Bnei Kahat might have been, well, a little alarmed because two people got killed by all of this a little while ago. Aaron's sons, for crying out loud. You can't get more important, and yet they died too. So do we know what we're supposed to do? And the answer from Or HaChaim is by the phrasing of our text, yes. God has explained to Aaron and Moses exactly what the Kahatites should do and shouldn't do so that they will not die. We now know the right way to walk. It is not a minefield where everything is randomly buried and we don't know what to do, and at any moment we could transgress. No, it has been laid out very clearly so that they will not die. Therefore, they need not be afraid that they'll die by doing something accidentally. As long as they do what they are supposed to do, everything will be fine. Sforno has a slightly different reason for why all of these stipulations are made in such detail. Instead, he says, assign to each of them his specific duty in order to avoid a free-for-all. By doing this, you will ensure that each Levite will wait patiently until his turn comes to carry out his assigned duty. So Sforno is focusing more on sort of general human, general human nature, where if there are important jobs to do, then people might rush to do them. And when it's important, people might rush partly because, well, there is status to be gained. And if there is status to be gained, then people are not always going to be properly considering the implications of their behavior. So he is seeing this as being a minefield, not because we don't know what to do, but because if we just said, this is what needs to be done and left it there, people would continually edge closer and closer to try and get the plum job, the most important job, the most impressive job. And in doing so, now they would be transgressing what were clear rules, but clear rules become very hazy when somebody is running after that brass ring. So Sforno was saying that it's being outlined like this of exactly which clan and which people have to be given directions in advance to do whatever they're doing in order to make sure that that instinct within us does not take hold and lead us to actually stumble at the finish line. So, very good student of human nature, in my opinion, Sforno. Now, we're going to go back to Or HaChaim here, and we're going to just remind ourselves a little bit of the text, because I realized I forgot to put in the translation there, which I know will confuse people a little bit. So in verse 19, at the very end of this middle verse, we're doing two words, the Samu Otam, where we are talking about placing on them. Now, and Fox is quite rightly translating that as assigning each one of them. To place upon someone is to give them a duty. So keep that in mind when we get through Or HaChaim's commentary. This means that the Kahatites were not to consider themselves as performing their task on their own authority. If they would do so, that is to say, if they thought they were doing it because they thought they should, there was a danger that anyone who loved the sacred vessels would appropriate to themselves a part in the service of the tabernacle. Meaning that, well, like Sforno was worried, people, even for the best of motives, are sometimes going to step over because they just can't help themselves. They just so love everything going on that they just have to be involved, even in things that are not theirs to be involved in. So, to avoid that, all the Kahatites did was to be under the supervision of Aaron and his sons and at their direction. This would ensure that every member of the Kahatites knew his place, not knowing his place in the social hierarchy, but knew his place, meaning knew exactly where to be in the choreography of this very important, but also very dangerous activity. And the words, U'smo'otam, place upon him, stress that it is not enough, upon them, excuse me, not enough for each Kahatite to know his place, but that they had to wait before putting their hands on the vessels they were to carry until instructed to do so by Aharon. So that extra little wording there, again, seemingly superfluous, is there to say not only do they need to know what their job is, they have to wait until they are told, go. It's like if you know your cue on to go out on stage, that's great, but you actually have to wait for the stage director to tell you now, or to give you that little finger point to send you out there. Because even though you know it, you might still be just off, and you have to wait for the person whose job it is to tell you to move. Okay, now all of this probably sounds needlessly overdone because, after all, couldn't we all just pitch in and the work would get done? Let the Kohanim do what the Kohanim are doing, let the rest of us do what we're doing, and it'll get done. But Sefer HaChinuch, Mitzvah 389 here, gives us a great reminder, among many other commentaries, that that's not the way people actually work. Oftentimes, when we're thinking and studying Torah, we are in a higher state of mind, which is wonderful and excellent, and one of the many benefits that comes from study. But we often tend to forget the way we actually live when we're not in the midst of that study. Thankfully, our ancestors and sages are able to distill more than just those moments of devotion and try and bring it back to us in the real world. It is from the roots of this commandment, the division of the labor, that because the service of the Levites and Kohens is a very precious and holy service, therefore the work needs to be very guarded from abandon, from slothfulness, and from forgetfulness. So, counter to Or HaChaim and Sforno, who each thought many people would be rushing forward to do things that they weren't supposed to do because they were so eager, Sefer HaChinuch is worried about the opposite, that people will not be doing the work and that it will be done poorly or not at all. Now, why is that? Well, there is no doubt that there is more negligence with any work incumbent upon two people or more than work incumbent upon one alone. This has actually been borne out in modern psychological research, that if you have a distributed responsibility, a setting where people feel that all of us are equally obligated, then if no one moves, oftentimes the task will go undone. The classic example in research is to have people in an elevator, and you have many Confederates and one test subject. One of the actors will drop some papers, the other Confederates will not move, and the subject, who doesn't know that this is rigged, will follow the lead of all the other people and not bend over to help. On the other hand, if you have a person in an elevator and only one actor, and the actor drops some papers and bends over to pick them up, almost certainly the person that is being the subject of the test will also bend down to help, because there is no inaction among the other members in the room to dissuade them from doing so. That is to say, when we feel personally responsible, we are much more likely to act well than when we feel that we are collectively responsible. It is a classic social problem where many times the more people involved, the less things get done, because the more each individual assumes someone else is going to be doing it. Just one more example of this from Jewish wisdom, which predates the modern psychological testing with all of its statistical analysis, is the classic story of the village that only had 10 people to make up a minyan. And every day, rain or shine, snow or sickness, each of those 10 showed up for the minyan, because if any one of them had stayed home, they wouldn't have had a minyan. And each one knew that they were intimately important and valuable to that activity, and thus they would not ever allow themselves to miss it. Finally, a new person arrives in the village, and now there are 11 people for the minyan, and the next day, only 7 people show up. Because once there is someone else who could be doing it, each of us individually assumes that someone else will do it, which diminishes the likelihood that anyone will do it. It's a huge social problem, and one that should remind us that at any given time when we see something that needs doing, we have to imagine that we are the only one available to do it and thus do it. But let's not get too sidetracked on this important topic, because there's more to learn about karet, I promise. So, as he says, this is something clear to all. I don't think that's true. I think many people assume that the more of us that are engaged, the more of us will do. But, perhaps he had a different experience, but certainly he understood this was a problem. And by way of parable, may their memory be blessed, said something about something similar to this in Bava Batra: a stew of partners is not hot and not cold. Very strange idiom to the modern ear, and one I don't think is going to catch on again. What the parable meant in the time, or the aphorism meant at the time, was that if 2 people were meant to be minding the stew, no one is actually going to be keeping track of it. So it'll end up neither hot if you wished it to be hot, nor cold if you wished it to be cold. It's going to end up always at the wrong temperature, because no one partner is going to focus their entire effort on making sure it's correct. Again, it doesn't sound natural in the modern ear, but that's how aphorisms work. Okay, let's jump back into our real case of karet and through the midrash, now that we've got an idea of why someone might have transgressed this, of whether they were being lazy or whether they were being eager. Let's imagine the transgression has happened, and now karet is our problem, right? That is exactly the crux of the issue here in chapter 4. Well, what do we do at that point? We just sit around and wait for God to throw a meteor at us? Well, for any other transgression, what do we do when we have transgressed? We make atonement. We will do teshuvah. Now, for some things, the teshuvah is simply, I won't do that again. For other things, the teshuvah will often include an act of repatriation, or reparation, excuse me, where we pay back what we have stolen or what we defrauded. Sometimes it is a sacrifice. Well, what do we do for a karet type infraction? Because this isn't against another person. This isn't against the community. This is me and God. How do I do? What do I do? Well, here's what the Midrash says. In the case of one who commits a transgression punishable with excision, karet, according to the Torah, how do they receive pardon and become freed from their excision? Because remember, this is a sword of Damocles hanging over their head. At any given moment, they could drop dead because of this at the hand of God. Well, I think most of us would want to get out from under that position, and we would want to make atonement so that that was no longer the punishment that was hovering above us. So how do we get out from this? Well, our masters have taught, this is from the Mishnah in Makot, all who are liable to excision, when they have been scourged, are exempt from their excision. As stated in Deuteronomy, then the judge shall have him lie down. He may give him 40 lashes, but no more. Then your brother would be degraded. When he has been scourged, then he is again your brother. All right, so what we've got going on here is a midrash within a midrash. So in the Mishnah for Makot, they are explaining that somebody who has committed an offense that is punishable by karet, by death at the hand of heavens, when they have done teshuvah, when they have admitted their mistake, when they have regretted their deed, and when they are prepared to overcome whatever it is that made them do it in the first place, that they will be flogged. Now, flogging has a horrible reputation, as it should, because it has been used brutally and corruptly for thousands of years in almost every community. But set that aside for a moment. At the moment, let's instead focus on the idea that if a person has actually committed a crime punishable by excision, by karet, that if they did teshuvah, they would be flogged, and once they had been flogged, it would then be gone. again, teshuvah is important. They have to actually repent. This isn't just we take them and flog them. This has to be a willing decision on their part in order to make this be actual atonement, to make this as something that is freeing them from karet. And the upshot of all of this is that, of course, they are our brother or sister throughout the entire process. We cannot overflog, because if we do, then they would be humiliated in front of us, and that once it has been done, we should accept them as our brother as well, and not hold this against them. That this is a perfect example of teshuvah, where a deed was done that was wrong, a atonement has taken place, a punishment was meted out, and then the person is restored to exactly as they were before any of this began with the wrong deed. Now, the question then becomes, in Deuteronomy, why was there a level of 40 lashes, which, by the way, in rabbinic law was reduced to 39? Well, it is simply that because this human, this Adam, was 40 days in creation and transgressed against the Torah, which was 40 days in the giving. Thus, he will be given 40 lashes and to be exempt from his punishment. So the time that it takes to create a person and the time it takes to create the Torah become the numerical value needed for the reconciliation between the person and the Torah. Now, the idea of a person taking 40 days to form is that is the point where within gestation, a form of a human shape can begin to be discerned, should there happen to be a miscarriage, God forbid. So 40 days of that taking shape and 40 days of Torah taking shape become the question of how do we reconcile these two things that took 40 days to make, at least in their basic shape. After all, Torah continued after Sinai, and of course, humans aren't fully human until they are fully born. So the answer is we will reconcile that with the 40 stripes of flogging in order to find that balance. And so you find in the case of the first Adam, that is to say, Adam Rishon back in the garden, when he was commanded and told, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, he incurred the sentence of death. And the world was scourged with 40 punishments, 10 for Adam, 10 for Eve, 10 for the serpent, and 10 for the lamb. That is to say, all suffered various forms of punishment and of difficulty. The land itself now was harder to produce, and that 40 level of punishment then meant that Adam and Eve and the serpent and the land would not die, that they would be removed. Now, you might be thinking about, wait a minute, what's the point of a punishment if you can get out of it? Hold on to that thought. Therefore, when a person commits one of the transgressions punishable by death, this is karet, not death at the hand of the court, but death at the hand of heaven, he is scourged with 40 lashes. And so you find with each and everything that the Holy One commanded Moses warnings and punishments. It is written concerning Shabbat, remember Shabbat, that is the warning. And as punishment, whoever profanes it shall surely be put to death. They came to the desert and found one gathering, but Moses did not know by what death he should be killed. And the Holy One said, the person shall surely be put to death, all the congregation shall stone him with stones. Now, immediately, Moses rose in prayer and said, Sovereign of the world, if someone from Israel should so sin, should he be stoned? Behold, all would be destroyed. Make another arrangement for them. All right, so the Midrash is trying to take us to a frame of mind where we say, yes, we have warnings, and yes, we have punishments, but oftentimes it really does feel like there is a disconnect, like there is something wrong in this process, like there is perhaps, if we are going to be a little more reflective about it, an inevitability that all of us would be wiped out. And that's what Moses is really trying to highlight there. Yes, we can imagine that as a perfect, wonderful human being, I would never make a mistake that ever might be punishable by karet. And therefore, someone else who is punishable by karet, well, let them burn, let them die, let them be hurt. You know, it's fine. Punish them, punish them, punish them. But Moses saw more clearly than most of us that any of us, in fact, all of us at different times will commit transgressions. And it is certainly very possible that any one of us or all of us at one point or another might have transgressed something for which the punishment would be karet. And if we were going to always put the people to death immediately in such a situation, well, then I guess we'd all be killed. At one point or another, we just wipe ourselves out in a fit of pursuit of justice. Instead, we need another arrangement. So God responds in the Midrash, fine, let them be scourged with 40 lashes, and they will be exempt from excision. They will no longer have karet. So that in the case where the karet would be the correct punishment, that there is a way for a person to avoid that problem. Similarly, coming back to our Torah portion directly, when the children of Aaron died, the tribe of Kohat saw them. They began yelling at Moses, saying, "Are we to die like that?" Right? I mean, look what happened to Aaron's kids. That's what happened. The Holy One said to Moses, "Just as I have made an arrangement for Aaron, as it is stated, only in this way shall Aaron come into the sanctuary. So also for the Kohat I'm making a similar arrangement, lest they die when they come near to the Holy of Holies. Do this for them, that they may live and not die." Where is it shown? Well, from when they read on the matter, "Do not cut off the tribe of the Kohat families from the Levites." So the Midrash, and I do appreciate that the classical Midrashic language is sometimes a little difficult to follow the language, especially in translation, but even in the original. The Midrash is trying to say it would be natural for the Kohat groups to look at what happened to Aaron's kids and say, if we participate in this, we'll die. And in order to allay that fear, there had to be clear rules to make sure they would know, if you do it this way, there is no danger. Right? All you have to do is do it A, B, C. What you're told, when you're told, and there is no danger. It is the safest possible thing you can do, and in fact, it will give life to you. You will be rewarded in the performance of this. Yes, do it wrong, and there are consequences, there are punishments, but it's only if done wrong. And even if it is done wrong, there is a way to make amends. There is a process to come back. There are arrangements that can be made so that you will not be simply struck dead like the children of Aaron. This is part of the overall project of the Midrashim, of trying to allay the fears, not just of the tribe of Kohat, but of all of us, that all of us worry, are we doing what God wants? Am I living the right way? Is God going to throw a lightning bolt at me? Have I been hit by a lightning bolt from God in whatever form of local disaster I might be experiencing? Is this God's retribution against me for something? And the Midrash is trying to say here and in many other places, that's not how it works, right? God is not here to trick you. God is not here to say, "Gotcha," and leap out from behind a cloud with a lightning bolt like some malicious Greek deity. This is all God wants, that we know what to do and that we be given a chance to do it, and that if we do it, there will be reward, and if we don't, there will be ways to make amends. It will not be instant death simply because we tripped, because we made a mistake, whether deliberate or not, that we do not incur immediate punishment for our transgressions. God really has not made the world a trap. He has not laid it out like a minefield just to blow us up at random. We've been given a very clear map of what to do and when. And when we follow it, we will be good. When we trip, there are ways to recover. That is the upshot of all of this. I know the Torah can sometimes sound very scary, and I think our ancestors knew that too. Otherwise, they would not have written the Midrashim with as much compassion and with as much understanding as they do. So, take away from that as you must. Now, we are going to finish off with one slightly bit of a different theme taken from the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, which has a little bit more of a twist on all of this. From where do you understand that if someone dies at age 50, he dies of karet? It is written, do not cut off the tribe of the families of Levi. Do the following for them that they should live and not die. Well, organize them that they should not enjoy seeing the holiest of holies, enjoy here in the negative sense. As it is written, they should not come to look when the holies are wrapped and die. And it is written further on in chapter 8, at age 50, he should retire from the workforce. Like we saw, they are on duty between the ages of 30 and 50. Rabbi Avin, the son of Rabbi Tanhum ben Rabbi Trifon, understood it from here, from the Psalms. The days of our lives here are 70 years, taken from Psalm 90. So if we say you have 70 years on average, and then we subtract the 20 years during which the heavenly court does not punish with karet, you'll find that one who dies at 20 years dies in karet. Now, this is highlighting the difficulty of trying to interpret what is and is not a heavenly punishment. This is one attempt, and I think you'll agree a fairly clumsy attempt to try and nail down how we can identify what was karet and what was not. The simple fact of the matter is saying, well, people normally live 70 years, but there's 20 years before we're actually held accountable, so that makes 50 years. And therefore, if we make it past 50, we've actually got to be part of our full life. Well, wait, no, that doesn't make sense, because that would be only 30 years that we were eligible. So why it doesn't actually work all that well when you try to outline it, but you can hear somebody trying to figure out, in this case, the rabbis of the tradition, how do we know when someone died from karet and when someone died because it was a war, or because it was a famine, or because there was a plague? How can we identify who was guilty and who was simply caught up because of the tragedy of the moment? And the real answer here, as well as in the book of Job and elsewhere, is you don't. You don't figure that out. That we do not have an answer key. There is no decoder ring that allows me to interpret those people died because they deserved it, and these people died because of the wickedness of someone else. That we don't interpret the death of anyone as being reflective of their moral success or their moral failings. Just like we don't interpret the long life of someone to being part of their moral success. Instead, well, like the tribe of Kahat, we do what we're asked to do when we're asked to do it, and we do it to the best of our ability. We do not look for others to do what is our responsibility, and we neither rush in preemptively nor push anyone else out of the way who is equally trying to help. And we do the best we can. By studying, by learning, by focusing, we do the best we can. And when something bad happens, well, we try to fix it. We try to fix it for ourselves or fix it for someone else. And we don't imagine that this is a punishment. We don't imagine this is karet. We don't imagine this is some other pressure coming from the moral implications of our behavior. We shouldn't need to feel like there is an actual problem before we try to remedy our situation. And we shouldn't take every problem as though it were indicative of our own failings. Instead, we do as God asked, and that is enough. And interpreting life, well, we can interpret life the same way our tradition did, which is to say, yeah, we do the best we can. And God has not made this into a trap. God has not made the world into a haunted house where something will jump out of each door to scare us. God made this world so that we would be able to have a good life, and God gave us the Torah so we would know how to do it. That's all we need to focus on. The rest is what we deal with, but not what we interpret. So hopefully that gave a little bit of insight. Obviously, the topic of karet is much more than we can possibly cover on a front and back of a piece of paper. But hopefully, at least there's enough of an insight to clear up this commonly misunderstood term and idea. A reminder for those of you that actually keep track of the calendar. that I'll be going on my vacation soon. We also have the holiday of Shavuot next week in any event, which means that between one thing and another, we will not be having the Wednesday luncheon learn this class until July 2nd. So we've got a number of weeks off because of the way the calendar worked out. So the next formal class like this will be on July 2nd. As always, though, I'm available by email, phone call, text, and any other form of communication you happen to like. And we can continue to talk and learn together on piecemeal. But the class, I'll see you in July. Take care, everyone, and be well.